I raised my son for 38 years alone after my husband died, when he was just 2. I worked 3 jobs, saved every penny, and put him through college. But at dinner last night, when I asked about wedding plans, my son grabbed his fiancée's hand, flashed a new gold band, and smirked. "You lost, Mom. It was yesterday." I sat frozen as ice water filled my veins, but they had no idea that the property deed, the $5 million trust fund, and the family business were still in my name. And now, they never would be his. Y'all won't believe what happened next. "So when's the big day?" I asked, smiling at my son Tyler and his fiancée Madison, as we sat at Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant in downtown Chicago, where I'd been taking Tyler for special occasions since he was small. "I'd love to help with the planning." Tyler and Madison exchanged glances, a smirk playing on both their lips. The waiter had just poured our Cabernet, and I noticed Madison twisting something on her finger under the table. "About that, Susan," Tyler said, using my first name instead of Mom, like he'd started doing since meeting Madison 2 years ago. "We've been talking, and we wanted something small." "Small is fine," I nodded, taking a sip of wine. "Just family would be beautiful." Madison snorted quietly, adjusting her designer purse on the chair beside her. "Well, that's sort of what we did." "Did?" My fork paused halfway to my mouth. Tyler reached across the table and grabbed Madison's hand, both of them now sporting matching gold bands that caught the candlelight. His eyes held that same defiant look he'd had as a teenager when he'd push boundaries to see how far I'd bend. "You lost, Mom. It was yesterday." The restaurant noise faded to a dull hum. The tablecloth suddenly seemed intensely white under the soft lighting. "Yesterday," I whispered. "At the courthouse," Madison added, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Just us and my parents. So intimate." My mind flashed back through the decades, staying up all night with Tyler's fevers, working double shifts at the hospital to afford his baseball equipment, selling my mother's jewelry to pay for his college application fees, sitting alone at his graduation while other kids had 2 parents cheering. "I see," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Congratulations." "Thanks," Tyler shrugged, already scanning the menu. "We're thinking of using the lake house for the honeymoon. Key still in the usual place?" The lake house. My lake house. The one I'd purchased after 15 years of saving, that Tyler had only visited as my guest. "Actually," I said, taking another sip of wine, "I've been meaning to talk to you about a few things." "Like what?" Madison asked, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently on the table. I forced a smile. "Just some paperwork. Family matters." Tyler rolled his eyes. "Can it wait? We're celebrating." "Of course," I said, raising my glass. "To the newlyweds." As we clinked glasses, I made a mental note to call my attorney first thing in the morning. The drive home from dinner felt endless. Rain pelted my windshield as Chicago's skyline glittered in my rearview mirror, each droplet carrying a memory of the life I'd built for us. After Richard died when Tyler was just a toddler, I'd had nothing but $20,000 in life insurance and a mountain of medical bills. I moved us from our apartment in Lincoln Park to a tiny 1-bedroom in a rougher neighborhood. I slept on the pull-out couch for 7 years so Tyler could have the bedroom. I worked days as a receptionist at Northwestern Memorial, evenings waiting tables at a diner in Wicker Park, and weekends doing bookkeeping for small businesses. Every extra penny went into Tyler's college fund. When Tyler was accepted to Northwestern, I cried for an hour straight. The scholarship covered most costs, but I still worked overtime to handle his living expenses. After graduation, when he landed his first job at a marketing firm downtown, I finally allowed myself to breathe. Then came the investment opportunity. A colleague's husband was selling rental properties in a rapidly developing area of Milwaukee. I pulled together every cent I had, took out a loan against my 401k, and bought 2 duplexes. Within 5 years, I'd parlayed those into a small real estate empire across Illinois and Wisconsin. By the time Tyler met Madison at a charity gala 3 years ago, I had amassed just over $5 million in assets. The lake house in Door County, 4 apartment buildings, a commercial property in Evanston, and substantial investments. I'd planned to start transferring everything to Tyler when he settled down, ensuring his future security. As I pulled into my driveway in Oak Park, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister Laura in Milwaukee. "How was dinner? Did they set a date?" I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Finally, I typed, "They got married yesterday. Didn't invite me." Laura's response was immediate. "What the actual fun? Call me now." Instead, I set my phone down and walked to my home office. I opened the safe hidden behind a family portrait. Tyler at his college graduation, my arm around him, both of us beaming. Inside were all the documents, property deeds, business incorporation papers, investment portfolios. Everything was still solely in my name. I'd been waiting for the right time to start the transfer. That time would never come now. The morning after the dinner revelation, I called in sick to the property management office I still ran despite not needing the income. Some habits die hard when you've been poor. Instead of working, I found myself scrolling through Madison's Instagram account. She hadn't added me as a friend, but her profile was public, something I'd never mentioned to her. And there they were, wedding photos. Madison in a sleek white dress from that boutique on Michigan Avenue I could never afford in my working days. Tyler in a tailored suit I recognized. I'd bought it for him for job interviews last year. Madison's parents, Steve and Brittany, beaming with champagne glasses raised high inside what looked like a private room at the Peninsula Hotel. The caption, "Surprise. Just married. No regrets. Daughter family matters." The comments section was filled with confused responses from friends. "What? No way. OMG, why didn't you tell anyone? What about the big wedding you were planning?" To which Madison had replied, "Sometimes you just have to cut out the drama." I kept scrolling until I found a photo from 3 weeks earlier. Madison, Tyler, and her parents at dinner. Madison's mother showcasing what appeared to be wedding invitation samples. They had planned it. All along, they had planned to exclude me. My finger hovered over the phone icon next to Tyler's name, but instead I opened my emails. There sat an unread message from 2 days ago, from Stanley Weinberg, Esquire. Subject, Final Estate Planning Documents. "Susan, attached, please find the final documents we discussed for transferring properties and establishing the family trust. As mentioned, once executed, these would transfer substantial assets to Tyler while maintaining your life interest. Please review, and we can schedule the signing next week. Best, Stan." I never got to respond. They had timed this perfectly. With shaking hands, I picked up my phone and dialed my attorney's direct line. "Stan, it's Susan Williams. About those documents, there's been a change of plans. For the next 2 weeks, I became a detective in my own life. I needed to understand exactly what had happened before making any permanent decisions. I started with Tyler's credit card statements. He was still on my American Express family plan, something he'd never bothered to change, even though he made 6 figures at his marketing firm. The statements revealed dinner reservations, jewelry store purchases, and appointments at various wedding vendors dating back 3 months. They had been planning this for a quarter of a year. Next, I called my friend Diane, who worked at the courthouse in downtown Chicago. "Hey, Di, it's Susan. I need a favor that might cross some lines." "Shoot," she said. Diane had been there through my divorce and Richard's death. She understood loyalty. "My son got married without telling me. I need to know if there's anything unusual about the marriage license application." There was a pause. "Give me his full name and DOB. I'll call you back." An hour later, my phone rang. "Susan, you sitting down?" Diane's voice was tight. "What is it?" "The witnesses on the license. One is Madison's mother. The other, it's a woman named Karen Mitchell. Isn't that my former assistant?" I confirmed, feeling like I'd been punched. Karen had worked for me for 7 years before leaving to start her own business. She'd known Tyler since he was in high school. There's more, Diane continued. They filed for the license exactly 1 day after the minimum waiting period under Illinois law. And Susan, they listed Tyler's address as the lake house. My lake house. The one in Door County, Wisconsin. The one I'd never given him permission to claim as his residence. Thanks, Di, I said, my voice hollow. Want me to have my cousin at the IRS look into them? She offered. Chicago worked on connections. Always had. Not yet, I said, but keep that option open. After hanging up, I checked the security camera footage from my lake house. Another modern convenience I'd splurged on after years of pinching pennies. The footage showed Tyler and Madison had been using it regularly for months, often bringing friends for weekend parties. In one clip, Tyler was clearly showing off, telling someone, "Yeah, this will all be mine soon. Just waiting for the paperwork." That evening, my doorbell rang. It was a delivery from Madison's mother's boutique in Lincoln Park. An expensive cashmere sweater with a note. To my new mother-in-law. Looking forward to family dinners. Madison. The timestamp on the order showed she'd purchased it the morning after our dinner. Damage control. They were in damage control mode. I placed the sweater carefully back in its box and reached for my phone to call Laura again. "I think I know what happened," I told her, "and I know exactly what I'm going to do about it." The following Saturday, I invited Laura to drive down from Milwaukee. We spread everything I'd gathered across my dining room table. The credit card statements, security footage screenshots, property documents, and investment portfolios. "Holy shit, Susan," Laura whispered, looking at the total value of my assets. "I knew you were doing well, but $5 million? And the kid doesn't even appreciate what you've built?" I sipped my coffee, hands steady now after days of shaking. "Apparently not. But there's more." I opened my laptop and clicked play on a video file. The footage showed Madison and her mother, Brittany, sitting at my lake house kitchen table 3 months ago. I'd been reviewing security footage from the past year and found this gem. "Once Tyler gets the inheritance, we can finally sell this place," Madison was saying, gesturing around my carefully restored kitchen. "It's so outdated. We could get a condo in Gold Coast instead." "How much longer do you have to wait?" Brittany asked, examining her manicured nails. "Tyler says his mom is preparing to transfer everything. After the wedding. She's such a control freak. Has to have her name on everything. But we're thinking if we just do a quick courthouse thing, we can speed up the process." "Brilliant," Brittany nodded. "The quicker you get that money, the better. Remember what happened with your cousin Amber? Her mother-in-law changed her mind at the last minute and wrote her son out of the will." Madison laughed, a sound I once thought was charming. "That won't happen here. Tyler's got his mom wrapped around his finger. She'd do anything for him." Laura stared at the screen, mouth open. "What a couple of vipers." "Wait for it," I said quietly. The video continued. Brittany leaned forward conspiratorially. "And if she does change her mind?" Madison's face hardened. "Plan B. Tyler's the only beneficiary on her life insurance. $3 million. She's still young, but accidents happen." I paused the video as Laura gasped. "She can't be serious," Laura whispered. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I'm not taking chances." I pulled out a folder containing my updated estate plans. "I met with Stan yesterday. I've removed Tyler as my healthcare proxy and power of attorney. Laura, I've named you instead, if you're willing." Laura grabbed my hand. "Of course. But Susan, what are you going to do about the money? The properties?" I closed the laptop and straightened the papers. "I'm going to teach them both exactly what they've lost." "How?" I smiled for the first time in weeks. "By giving them exactly what they wanted, and then taking it all away." The next Friday, I texted Tyler, "Dinner tonight. Need to discuss some paperwork with you and Madison. The Standard Club at 7. His response came quickly. "Sure, Mom. Everything okay?" The eagerness in his reply made my stomach turn. Of course he'd be available. He thought he was about to get everything he'd been waiting for. I arrived at the Standard Club in downtown Chicago early, dressed in a new Armani suit I'd purchased specifically for this occasion. The private dining room I'd reserved overlooked Millennium Park, the city lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled. At precisely 7:05, Tyler and Madison arrived, both looking expectant. Madison wore a designer dress I recognized from her Instagram. $3,000 at Neiman Marcus. I wondered if they'd already started spending the money they thought they were about to receive. "Mom," Tyler said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. The gesture felt hollow. "You look great. Thank you for meeting me," I said, gesturing to the seats. A waiter appeared immediately with champagne. "Special occasion?" Madison asked, eyeing the Dom Perignon. "Very special," I confirmed, raising my glass. "To new beginnings." They exchanged excited glances before clinking glasses. "So," Tyler began after taking a sip, "you mentioned paperwork." I placed a manila envelope on the table. "Yes. As you know, I've built quite a portfolio over the years." Madison leaned forward slightly, her eyes brightening. "I've been thinking about succession planning for some time," I continued, "especially now that you're married." "That's great, Mom," Tyler said, reaching for Madison's hand. "We've actually been looking at properties in Gold Coast. There's this amazing condo." "I've made some decisions," I interrupted, pushing the envelope toward them. "These are the transfers. Everything. The lake house, the apartment buildings, the commercial property, and the investment accounts." Tyler opened the envelope, his hands almost trembling with excitement. He pulled out the documents, scanning them quickly. "Mom, this is everything," he whispered. $5.2 million in total assets," I confirmed. "Everything I've built since your father died." Madison couldn't contain herself. "That's so generous, Susan," she gushed, already mentally spending the money. "It is," I agreed, which is why I was surprised not to be invited to the wedding. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Tyler shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, we explained that. It was just a small thing, spur of the moment." 3 months of planning isn't spur of the moment, Tyler," I said calmly. "Neither is telling Madison's parents, but not your own mother." Madison's smile faltered. "How did you know it was 3 months?" I ignored her question. "I have one more document for you to see." I pulled out a second envelope and slid it across the table. Tyler opened it cautiously, his face drained of color as he read. "What is it?" Madison demanded, grabbing the paper from him. "A revocation," I explained. "Effective immediately. I'm canceling the transfers. I'm also evicting you from my lake house where you've been living without permission. You have 30 days. "You can't do this," Madison sputtered, her voice rising. "I can, and I have," I replied evenly. "The documents were prepared but never filed. Nothing has changed as terms of ownership." "But why?" Tyler asked, his voice breaking. "Because we got married without you. That's so petty." I leaned forward, my voice low. "No, Tyler. Because I heard what Madison said about selling my lake house. About how accidents happen. If I changed my mind about giving you my money." Madison's face went white. "I never." "Security cameras," I cut her off. "In my house. My house that you've been using as your own." "Mom," Tyler began, desperation in his voice. "Whatever you heard, Madison didn't mean it. We were just talking." "Save it," I said, standing up. "The waiter has instructions to bring your dinner. I've already paid. Consider it the only inheritance you'll be receiving from me." I gathered my purse and looked at my son, this stranger wearing the face of the boy I'd raised. "You said I lost, Tyler, but you're the one who lost everything." Within 24 hours, the calls and texts began flooding in. First from Tyler. "Mom, please call me back. We need to talk about this. You're overreacting. It was just a stupid conversation. You can't throw away our relationship over one mistake." Then from Madison. "Susan, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. What you heard wasn't what it sounded like. Please meet with us and our attorney to discuss this rationally." Their attorney? They'd already consulted an attorney. I forwarded all messages to Stan, who advised me not to respond directly. Instead, he sent a formal letter reiterating the eviction notice for the lake house and demanding the return of all keys to my properties within 48 hours. 3 days after the confrontation, my doorbell rang at 7 a.m. I checked the security camera to see Madison's parents, Steve and Brittany, standing on my porch in designer athleisure wear, looking like they'd stepped out of a country club brochure. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. "Susan," Brittany began without preamble. "This has gone far enough. The kids made a mistake, but cutting Tyler out of his inheritance is extreme." I leaned against the doorframe. "Good morning to you too, Brittany. Would you like to come in for coffee before telling me what to do with my money?" Steve stepped forward. "Look, we know the wedding situation wasn't handled well, but they're young and in love. Sometimes kids make impulsive decisions. 3 months of planning isn't impulsive," I replied. "And discussing how accidents happen to speed up an inheritance isn't youthful indiscretion." Their faces registered shock. Apparently, Madison hadn't shared that detail. "What are you talking about?" Steve asked. I pulled out my phone and played the video clip. As they watched their daughter and Brittany discussing my potential accident, the blood drained from their faces. "Oh my God," Steve whispered. Brittany recovered first. "She wasn't serious. Madison would never—" "Save it," I interrupted. "Whether she meant it or not doesn't matter. What matters is that my son and his wife saw me as nothing but a checkbook, a means to an end. What do you want?" Steve asked, suddenly businesslike. "Money. We can compensate you for the lake house usage." I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. "I don't want your money, Steve. I have my own. What I wanted was to be at my only child's wedding, to be treated with basic human dignity by the son I sacrificed everything for." "There must be something," Brittany began. "There's nothing," I cut her off. "Please leave my property before I call the police." After they left, I called Laura. "Phase 1 complete," I told her. "They know I have the video." "And Phase 2? She asked. "Starts now." That afternoon, I drove to Northwestern Memorial Hospital and met with the director of charitable giving, an old friend from my days working there. $5 million. He repeated, eyes wide. That would fund our children's cancer research for years. "With conditions?" I said, sliding over the document Stan had prepared. "The Susan and Richard Williams Foundation must be established. All research findings must be made public domain, and my name stays on it permanently." "Of course," he agreed. "But Susan, this is your entire estate." I thought of Tyler's face when he realized what he'd lost. "Not my entire estate," I corrected. "Just the beginning of my legacy. The Meun Our Chapter 8. The retaliation." 2 weeks after my confrontation with Tyler and Madison, I received a certified letter from a law firm I didn't recognize. Armstrong, Paulson, and Mitchell, LLP. Inside was a formal notice of intent to sue for intentional infliction of emotional distress, breach of verbal contract, and elder abuse. The letter claimed I had verbally promised Tyler his inheritance and was now withholding it due to mental instability and paranoid delusions. Elder abuse. I was 58 years old. I forwarded the letter to Stan, who called me within minutes. "This is a desperate move," he assured me. "The allegations are laughable, especially with the video evidence, but they're hoping to intimidate you." "They picked the wrong mother to intimidate," I said, surprisingly calm. "What's our next step?" "We counter. Hard." The following day, Tyler and Madison found themselves served with multiple legal notices: trespassing charges for unauthorized use of the lake house, demand for repayment of all utilities and damages, and a cease and desist regarding any claims to my property. Additionally, Stan filed a police report regarding Madison's comments about accidents happening, ensuring it was documented officially. The reaction was swift. That evening, Madison's Instagram went private, and Tyler's LinkedIn profile was updated to remove any mention of the lake house property he'd been claiming as his own business address. Then came the call from Tyler's boss at the marketing firm. "Susan, it's Jim Donovan. I'm concerned about some developments with Tyler." Jim had been a friend for years. His firm had been one of my bookkeeping clients when I was struggling to make ends meet. What's happened? I asked. He's been telling clients he has family property investments, using that lake house in his portfolio presentations. Now I'm hearing rumors about legal issues. I closed my eyes. Jim, I can't discuss pending legal matters, but yes, there are issues regarding unauthorized use of my properties. Damn it, Jim muttered. Susan, I've got clients threatening to pull accounts. Corporate doesn't take kindly to misrepresentation. I understand, I said quietly. For what it's worth, Jim added. I always thought that Madison was bad news. The way she talked about you at the Christmas party last year. Tyler used to be a good kid. After hanging up, I sat in my quiet kitchen, remembering Tyler as a child, his first Little League game, his high school graduation, the day he got his college acceptance letter. Where had that boy gone? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Madison. Meeting tomorrow, 10 a.m., Starbucks on Michigan Ave. Come alone, or the video of you threatening us goes public. Threatening them? I had done no such thing. I forwarded the message to Stan, who advised against meeting them. Instead, he suggested an alternative approach. The next morning at 10 a.m., Madison was waiting at Starbucks. Instead of me, she was met by a process server, delivering a restraining order, and a notice that her video threat constituted blackmail, a felony in Illinois. By noon, Tyler was placed on administrative leave from his job. By dinner time, Madison's mother's boutique had received dozens of one-star reviews mentioning the family that threatens older women. I hadn't orchestrated the reviews, but Chicago was a small town in many ways. Word traveled fast, especially in the neighborhoods where I'd built my business over decades of honest work. That night, as I sat on my back porch watching fireflies dance in the summer darkness, my phone rang. It was Tyler sobbing. "Mom," he choked out, "please make it stop. You've made your point." For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old love, the instinct to comfort my child. Then I remembered his words. "You lost, Mom." "No, Tyler," I said quietly. "I don't think I have." 1 month after the confrontation at the Standard Club, I stood in the empty lake house, looking out over the water. The property management company had changed the locks and completed the eviction process. Tyler and Madison had taken their personal belongings, but left the place a mess. Deliberate damage to walls, stains on carpets, even a broken window. The pettiness was almost sad. "The contractors can start renovations next week," said Michael, my property manager. "What exactly are you planning to do with the place?" I turned from the window. "Convert it into a retreat center for single parents. Free weekends away from the stress. Counseling services on site." Michael nodded appreciatively. "That's really something, Susan. It's what Richard would have wanted," I said, thinking of my late husband. He always believed in giving back. After Michael left, I walked through each room, touching door frames and window sills, remembering weekends here with Tyler when he was young, building sandcastles, roasting marshmallows, teaching him to swim in the clear Wisconsin waters. My phone buzzed with a text from Laura. "How's it going up there?" "Bittersweet," I replied honestly. "But I'm ready for what's next." And I was. The previous week, I'd finalized the paperwork, establishing the Susan and Richard Williams Foundation. The first grant for pediatric cancer research would be announced next month. I'd also started volunteering at a women's shelter in Chicago, teaching financial literacy classes to women rebuilding their lives after abuse. As I locked up the lake house one last time, another text came through from Madison's father, Steve. "We need to talk. Not about money, about Madison's lies." I stared at the message for a long moment before responding. "Tomorrow. My office. Noon." The next day, Steve arrived at my property management office looking haggard, his usual polished appearance replaced by obvious stress. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, taking the seat I offered. "What's this about, Steve?" He rubbed his face. "Madison lied about the wedding. About everything." He pulled out his phone and showed me text messages between Madison and her mother, dating back 6 months. The messages revealed a calculated plan. Madison had convinced Tyler they should marry secretly, specifically to hurt me, believing it would make me desperate to maintain a relationship with my only child. The goal was to manipulate me into transferring assets faster. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the pain lancing through my chest. "Because I raised her better than this," Steve said, his voice breaking. "Brittany and we're separated now. Her encouraging this behavior was the last straw. I wanted you to know I had no part in it." "And Tyler, did he know about this plan?" Steve nodded reluctantly. "From what I can tell, yes. He was fully on board." After Steve left, I sat alone in my office, looking at the photos I still kept on my desk. Tyler's graduation, his first job, holidays together. With trembling hands, I opened my desk drawer and placed each frame inside, closing it firmly. That evening, I met with a counselor I'd been seeing since the confrontation. "How do you feel after learning the full extent of their plan?" Dr. Jenkins asked. "Strangely free," I admitted. Knowing it was all deliberate removes any doubt, any guilt I felt about my response. "And how will you move forward?" I thought about the foundation, the lake house renovation, the women I was teaching to be financially independent. "By living the life I want," I said. "By building a legacy that isn't dependent on biological family." "And Tyler?" I considered the question carefully. He's made his choice. Now I've made mine. 1 year after the wedding that I wasn't invited to, I stood on the deck of the renovated lake house, watching as 20 single mothers and their children arrived for the inaugural retreat weekend. The Susan and Richard Williams single-parent haven was officially open. "Ms. Williams?" A young woman approached, holding the hand of a small boy about 5 years old. "I'm Jessica. I just wanted to thank you personally. This is the first vacation Tommy and I have ever had." I smiled, remembering similar struggles decades ago. "I'm glad you're here, Jessica. There's a welcome package in your cabin, including information about our educational scholarship program." As Jessica and Tommy headed to their cabin, Laura joined me on the deck. "Look at you," she said, nudging my shoulder. "Regular philanthropist now." I laughed, just trying to make something good out of everything that happened. The past year had been transformative. The foundation was flourishing, funding not only cancer research but also educational programs for single parents. I'd sold 2 of my apartment buildings and used the proceeds to establish a scholarship fund. My story, carefully anonymized, had been featured in a Chicago Tribune article about reinvention after family estrangement. "Any word from Tyler?" Laura asked carefully. "Not directly," I said. "I heard from Jim that he and Madison moved to Florida after he finally lost his job. Apparently, her parents' divorce settlement included a condo in Tampa that they're living in now. Do you miss him?" I watched the families exploring the lakefront property, children laughing as they discovered the playground equipment we'd installed. "I miss who I thought he was," I admitted. "The child I raised. But that person doesn't exist anymore. Maybe never did." Laura squeezed my hand. "For what it's worth, I think Richard would be proud of what you've built here." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a notification. The Foundation's first research grant had resulted in a breakthrough treatment protocol for a rare childhood cancer. The press release included a quote from the lead researcher, acknowledging the Williams Foundation's support. "Susan," Jessica had returned, looking uncertain. "The other moms and we'd like to take a group photo with you." "For the memory book?" As I joined the group of women and children gathered on the beach, I thought about legacy. Not the one I'd planned to leave through Tyler, but something larger, more meaningful. "Everyone say, freedom," called the retreat coordinators as she raised the camera. "Freedom!" we all shouted, and in that moment I felt it completely. The liberation of building a life defined by choice rather than obligation. Later that evening, as I sat by the fire pit watching families roasting marshmallows, just as Tyler and I once had, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown Florida number. "Mom, it's Tyler. I heard about the foundation, about the lake house. I think I finally understand what I've lost. Not the money. You. I stared at the message for a long moment, watching the flames dance before me, feeling neither triumph nor sorrow, just peace. Without responding, I put my phone away and joined a young mother struggling to help her daughter build the perfect s'more. Some lessons come too late. Some losses can't be undone. But some endings make way for beginnings more beautiful than you ever imagined. Y'all, sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads you to exactly what you need. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment below. Have you ever had to reinvent yourself after betrayal? What unexpected blessings came from your most painful experiences? Share your thoughts. I read that every comment.